Hey everyone, it's Jennifer here, and you're watching My Catholic Life, where we talk about all things Catholic and how they pertain to the everyday life of a Catholic. This is my first video, so it's a new channel. If you'd like to see where this goes and different things that we talk about, please make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so that every time a new video comes up, you're notified. Okay, so now we're going to talk about September. It's September. We're well into September now. And I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to do this video before now, but in the Adirondack Mountains here where I live, we're all getting ready for winter, and that means a whole lot of work and not a lot of doing this. But September, as far as the Catholic Church is concerned, is the month of the Seven Sorrows of Mary. I didn't know what the Seven Sorrows of Mary were, or that there was even a chaplet for it until maybe last year. I went looking for some other devotionals I could pray because I am very devoted to the Holy Mother, and I wanted to be able to do something a little more. And I came across this. So what the Seven Sorrows is it's a prayer that dates back to the Middle Ages. Our Lady appeared to St. Bridget of Sweden, and she gave her this chaplet to say. And this is the chaplet, what the beads look like, and there are 7 sorrows, and there are 7 Hail Marys in between each sorrow. And I will be posting me saying the actual chaplet. So keep an eye out for that. And it'll be something that you can use to follow along for the rest of the month. Because if you're looking for another type of devotion, this is it. And this is the perfect month to do it. So I think where we should start is we'll go over what the 7 sorrows are, and then we're going to talk about the rewards and indulgences promised by the Holy Mother for saying this chaplet faithfully. So the first sorrow is the Prophecy of Simeon. For those who aren't familiar with who Simeon was, he was a rabbi in the temple. And he swore that he would not die until he saw the Son of God. And at 40 days, after the 40 days of the child's birth, Jewish children are presented in the temple. And it is also at the same time where the mother is cleansed. She's in the mikvah, the sacred bath, to now continue her life after childbirth. And it's a little bit of maybe confusing for people to say, oh, wait a minute, because isn't the presentation one of the joyful mysteries? And yes, it is. It is one of the joyful mysteries. But there's also a very sorrowful part to the presentation, because Simeon was also a prophet. And at that time, Simeon took Mary aside and he told her that she would go through terrible sorrow as if her heart was pierced with a spear. And he told her in detail as to what was going to happen to Jesus, how viciously, torturously, and heinously he was going to die. And if you just think about that for a minute, she went from, the Annunciation and Gabriel coming to her and asking her to do this, and her fiat, yes, I'll do this. And really, not really knowing what she was saying yes to, she found out that day. She had 40 days of complete happiness with her child. And that day, that 40th day, changed her life forever, because now she knew the gravity and the seriousness of what it meant, what her yes meant. And she grabbed onto it, and she accepted it, and she carried it. Even though she was waiting for that shoe to fall, when that day would come, when she would have to see all these things happen to her most beloved child. So this is one of the reasons why I admire her so. I mean, anyone with, children, grandchildren, or nieces and nephews even, would be able to understand, It's almost like, knowing, like having an ill child, knowing that, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when, and trying to keep joy in amongst that sorrow. And it's a very profound situation, and a very large reason as to why we should admire the Holy Mother of God. The second sorrow is the flight into Egypt. This is when Herod made the announcement that all boys 2 and under would be murdered, in hopes that he would wipe out this new king of the Jews that he had heard had been born. And when Mary and Joseph fled to Egypt, they didn't flee with a caravan. They fled alone. They fled at night, and they continued alone. They went through, heat and cold and wind and the dangers of thieves and, murderers, alone with a newborn child and a mother who'd just given birth. It's a very difficult trek. There's also a story and tradition that says that at one point Mary was confronted with robbers, and there was one thief who stood with a knife with the intent to harm, and she simply bent down and she picked up the child Jesus, and she looked into that robber's eyes, murderer's eyes, attempted, thoughts of murder, and something changed in him, and he said, "No, we're going to leave them alone." And they walked away. She stood there staunchly and with no fear, and in the confidence of God that he was going to save them, and he did. And there's some significance in this story, which I'm going to get to when we get farther down the list here. But now we're going to go to the third. And the third sorrow is the losing of Jesus for 3 days, and when they found him in the temple. Now, this is also a joyful mystery, but it also has some significance in sorrow, and also some foreshadowing, because if you think about how many days Jesus was missing from Joseph and Mary, it was 3 days. And how many days was he in hell after he was crucified? 3 days. And he said, "Where would I have been other than with my Father?" And that's exactly where he was intended to go as well after his resurrection. So it was almost like for lack of a better word, a trial run, for Mary to feel, what that was like. And she was in hell. I mean, if you really, think about anyone losing a child, that's pretty intense. I can't imagine losing my child for 3 days. But she found him safe and well 3 days later in the temple, which does end up making the end joyful. The fourth sorrow of Mary is when she meets Jesus while carrying his cross. And if you've ever seen The Passion of the Christ, in my opinion, that is the most heart-wrenching, sorrowful part of the whole movie, is when they meet and the love between them and the sorrow between them, and her knowing this was the last time she could hold his face, touch his face, look that deeply into his eyes, and the closeness and the feeling of the pride to some degree of Jesus when he says, "Look, Mother, I make things new again." That he had made her proud in all this suffering, and how they play against each other, against their trials and their sorrows. It's just beautiful and terrible at the same time. And the strength that the Holy Mother had to stand by and see all this happen and feel powerless and just let go and let God and do what she knew was his destiny is just amazing. Now, the fifth sorrow is Jesus' crucifixion. And I think the most profound and divine thing that had ever been done on earth was Mary standing at the foot of that cross and watching her God's Son, watching his life run out. the strength and the grace and all of those things that was needed for her to withstand that is more than most probably could ever bear, ever. And this is also where I bring up the thieves again. Who was on either side of Christ? Two thieves. And one of them said, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." Now, tradition says these two thieves were the same thieves that had approached Mary on their way to Egypt. And this thief saw Mary and he recognized her and he put it together as to who this was on the cross next to him. And this is why this saint is a saint. This thief is a saint because he acknowledged and he asked for forgiveness at that time. And in all of Christ's pain and torture at that moment, what did he say? "This day you will be with me in heaven." And the circle that it makes and the involvement that Mary was in all of that and saving that man, that look that she had looked in his eyes, he remembered that look and remembered her face, and it saved his soul. That's a pretty cool story. Whether it's real, I don't know, but the tradition says that that's what it is. So I think that's a pretty neat story. So as we continue, the sixth sorrow is when Mary holds the lifeless body of Jesus after he's taken down from the cross. And if we think about what being in hell is, the definition of hell is being away from God, being without him, and being that not only was he her son, but he was the divine God-man, and his life being gone, him away from her, ripped away from her, I'm sure felt like she was in hell. Even though she knew what was to come, she couldn't help but feel that ultimate grief however many times over, tenfold, 100-fold, 1,000,000-fold, who knows, and that she had just endured one of the most horrific and beautiful situations of the entire world. The seventh sorrow is the bearing of Jesus. This was very difficult. It was done very hurriedly, as Passover was starting, and he wasn't given the proper burial that he should have had, given his status. Granted, he was given a better burial than any other person had probably been crucified had been. He got his own tomb, but as we know, he wasn't given the burial that he should have had, and we read that in the scriptures, especially as Resurrection Day, when the ladies had gone to him to try to fix that and make things proper for their Lord. But that is the final sorrow. Although she knew what would happen, she just couldn't not be sad. It's just not something that the human body can probably, or mind even get through and try to be happy about after something that profound had just happened. So those are the seven sorrows, and you really should meditate on them, and really use what I've said to really put yourself in Mary's shoes and in Jesus' shoes, and try to come to a realization as to really how profound and how amazing strength that they both had to get through these trying times. And if you do meditate on these and you do these regularly, there are promises that Mary has given indulgences, if you will, for being loyal to her 7 sorrows. And the first is that she will grant peace to their families, which is amazing. Who doesn't want peace in their life, right? The second is that they will be enlightened about the divine mysteries, which, when you be enlightened, you may know the mysteries or whatever, but, if you get some more insight, and that's how you do it, is by meditation, you're more enlightened, and the more enlightened you are, the more they mean to you, and the more dear they are to you, and that always leads you into a better direction. The third is that she says, I will console them in their pains and will accompany them in their work. And that's just wonderful. I mean, if you have a bad day at work, oh, mother, help me, whatever it is, whatever small, large, whatever it is, she promises to be there for you. And that's amazing. As her mother, that is our mother. That's exactly what we would love from her. She says, I will give them as much as they ask for, as long as it does not oppose the adorable will of my divine Son or the sanctification of their souls. So if you are loyal to saying this chaplet, you can ask for whatever you want and it will be given to you, as long as, of course, you don't want to ask for something that would be contradicting to the salvation of your soul, which I can't imagine you would anyway if you're praying to Holy Mother. But it's so amazing. It's just amazing that she is able to do that for us, and why wouldn't you, right? She says, I will defend them in their spiritual battles with the infernal enemy, and I will protect them at every instant of their lives. Now, whether this is a small temptation, if you have, vices that you have, whatever they may be, or it's just a temptation to eat a candy bar at 10 o'clock at night and a ham sandwich and some fries and chips and whatever, she will be there, to help you, whether it be a large issue or small. She says, I will visibly help at the moment of death, and that you will see the face of your mother. Now, how many times have you said the rosary or prayed to Mary or looked at the statue and imagined what her face would look like? Well, this is the opportunity that you will have to see her face before death. And how beautiful is that, to see the face of your mother? She says, I have obtained this grace from my divine Son, and those who propagate this devotion to my tears and dolors will be taken directly from this earthly life to eternal happiness, since all their sins will be forgiven, and my Son will be their eternal consolation and joy. So, no purgatory? Sold, as far as I'm concerned. Sold. Who wants purgatory? I mean, we all have to pay for our sins. Whether, we can go to confession, but we have to make up for them. We have to make amends, whether it's here or it's after death. And if we can make up for them here now, why not? Why put off being in heaven? This is kind of like, a get out of jail free card. Like I said, this is amazing. This is, Jesus has granted her this grace to be able to transfer it to us. And, it shows just how important that she is to him. How wonderful their relationship is, and what he gives her and what she can in turn do for us. So if you haven't done this yet, really delve in and really dig in, get your toes in the sand, really, get into praying the 7 sorrows of Mary and see what it can do for you. So look for my video on saying the 7 sorrows of Mary, and we'll be talking again soon. It's Jen from My Catholic Life.